The independent Senator Nick Xenophon says it would be an act of economic vandalism to allow Holden to close its Australian operations. Today, in question time, the acting Prime Minister Warren Truss called on Holden to make its position clear for the sake of the workers.
So today I have written to the General Manager of Holden, Mr Devereux, asking General Motors to make an immediate statement clarifying their intentions in this country. They owe this to the workers of General Motors. Let us not go into a Christmas period without them making a clear commitment to manufacturing in this country, responding to this government's endeavours.
It would be an act of political madness and economic vandalism to allow Holden to slip through our fingers. The fact is, this industry is actually creating something like 50,000 jobs in Australia. If Holden goes, we will see a collapse in the whole supply chain of the auto industry in this country.
The Victorian Manufacturing Minister, David Hodgett, has criticised his federal coalition colleagues regarding comments about Holden. Mr Hodgett says government ministers should stop backgrounding journalists and speculating about Holden's future until the Productivity Commission process is over.
Look, my message to my federal colleagues is that any speculation on Holden's future is just that, it's speculation, and it's not helpful. As you would know, our automotive industry faces enormous challenges, huge challenges, and it's just not helpful when people are going around running a commentary on what may or may not be happening.
Joining me today now to discuss what's been going on, we have Labor MP Stephen Jones and Liberal MP Alan Tudge. Thanks for joining me.
Good to be here, Julie.
To you, Alan, firstly, we just heard there from one of your colleagues in the Victorian government with a message for coalition ministers to stop speculating about Holden. Do you think that's a message that needs to be taken on board?
Well, we want Holden to stay in this country. We want a strong, viable motorcar industry in this country, and we're having constructive conversations with the company. As you heard from the Deputy Prime Minister earlier, we want Holden itself to make a categorical statement about what its intent is, because ultimately the decision is theirs, not ours. We will work constructively with them. There's $1 billion on the table between now and 2015. There's a further $1 billion on the table from 2015 onwards, which correlates to about $50,000 per employee. But ultimately the decision is up to them. There's some division within the coalition as to whether there should be more money. Where do you stand on that? We've made our commitments clear, and we're also having a Productivity Commission review to guide us further on what decisions should be made in the future. But I would also say this, that not only is it important in terms of what government assistance is directly given to Holden, and they have had a great deal of government assistance and will continue to get some support under us, but it's the business environment which is also critical. And that's why we've already taken decisions, for example, to get rid of Labor's $1.8 billion fringe benefits tax hit, and why we're so determined to get rid of the carbon tax, because it adds on $400 to the cost of every single motorcar built in Australia, but doesn't cost a cent for an imported vehicle. We will be talking about the carbon tax, but I asked you what your position is on this, how you feel about car subsidies. What is where you're coming from? Well, where I'm coming from is that we've got our commitment, which we took to the electorate, and that was to continue with this $1 billion commitment to 2015 and a further $1 billion commitment subsequent to that. And we will stick to that commitment. Stephen Jones, bringing you into the discussion, that point Alan made about it's not just about money, it's about providing the right business environment. This is a point that Joe Hockey picked up on in question time today. Has Labor failed in the past to provide the right settings, given that we've seen Ford and Mitsubishi leave as well?
Look, we've been very supportive of the car industry in this country because we believe in it, and we believe in the livelihoods of the 45,000 people who get a direct livelihood from working in the car industry. Certainty is critical. These businesses are making long-term investment decisions, 5-year, 10-year, 15-year investment decisions. It's not helped when you've got senior cabinet ministers briefing your colleagues here in the ABC and elsewhere saying, well, Holden's are going to pull the plug. When you've got Mike Devereux saying the government knows everything they need to know from us about what we need to do to stay here in the country. And you've got Alan confirming the fact that that on the one hand they may assist the industry, but on the other hand, if the Productivity Commission tells them that they shouldn't, then they'll pull the plug on any future assistance as well. Nothing could be more uncertain than what we've got at the moment.
Where do you draw the line, though, Stephen Jones? Do you just keep giving more and more money? Is it a case of whatever it takes to keep them?
Yeah, I will say the same thing now as I said before the election. The car industry in this country has to make cars that Australians want to buy and that people in other countries want to buy, because our market is not big enough alone to sustain the car industry that we have here in Australia. So they've got to win export markets. Alan's figure, I've got to say, of $400 is absolute bunkum. The car industry itself has said around about $40, which is probably less than 10% of the average morning's discounting in any car yard around the country. So absolute nonsense. What will make the difference here, Julie? What will make the difference here is certainty from the government. We don't need one set of Cabinet Ministers briefing journalists on one hand. You've got Ian Macfarlane saying he wants to do the right thing by the industry. We need a clear position coming from government. We are anything from that at the moment.
Alan, you wanted to say?
I just wanted to pick up on a point that you actually initially raised, and that was how much money should you be given, and should we be funding them more and more and more, whatever it takes. And I point out that it was only this time last year when Prime Minister Gillard did a $215 million deal with the Holden motor car company, which was supposed to guarantee Holden being in this country until 2022. That was just last year. Now, all of a sudden, I don't know what's happened to that agreement, and they've come back and now seeking further additional money.
You guys have put a big question mark over it. That's what's happened.
We haven't put a question mark over it at all. That deal was done. That was supposed to keep Holden in this country until 2022. They should be sticking by that.
Let's have a look at the letter that Warren Truss has sent to Holden today. And he's saying that Holden needs to make a clear statement for the workers. How do you think this is playing out for the workers, Stephen Jones? It's just before Christmas. Do you think they should respond to that and make this immediate statement?
Well, I've met with many of the workers who are directly employed by Holden, and they are feeling like they're frozen, they can't make long-term commitments themselves. They don't know whether they're going to have a job next year. So terrible uncertainty and the stress that goes with that. Yes, Holden does need to make a decision. We're calling on the government and Holden to sit around a table and sort this out, and not be doing it by backgrounding journalists and having one Cabinet Minister say one thing, another Cabinet Minister say another thing. We need certainty. The workers need certainty.
Alan, is this letter from Warren Truss a sign that there's frustration within the coalition directed towards Holden? And he's said in it that the comments from Holden that there's no decision made merely confirmed that a decision to end manufacturing remains a live option.
We just want a clear, categorical statement from Holden as to what their intent is, because at the end of the day, the government can't force a company to stay here. It is going to be up to the company themselves to make that decision. We want to know what their intent is. We want to work with them constructively. We want to create a viable business environment for them to be successful. And I point out that under the previous coalition, the motor car industry grew by something like 22% in terms of the number of employees, but has declined in the last 5 or 6 years by about 23, 24%.
Now, we do need to move on. We've got a lot to get through today. And we'll move on to another topic now. And the Federal Environment Minister, Greg Hunt, is keeping the pressure on the Senate to sit over Christmas to deal with the carbon tax repeal legislation. Labor and the Greens are vowing to block the suite of bills in the Senate, but the government still wants to bring on a vote before Parliament rises for the year. Mr Hunt has accused the Senate of going on strike.
15 million people voted for action not long ago, and what is absolutely clear is that the Senate is on a go slow and then on a strike so as they can go home and watch the cricket. I think the Australian people want action. They want the Senate to sit. They want the Senate to do their duty. They don't want senators from the ALP who are simply going to put up their feet, crack a tinny, watch the cricket and laugh as electricity prices continue to skyrocket.